So for this assignment, I got the topic of chronemics. Chronemics is the study of how time affects the different relationships that we have, the different aspects of those relationships, and then the way that we communicate with each other. Under chronemics, there are two different subcategories that I'll be talking about. The first one is monochronemic. Monochronemic is a time system where time is broken into small increments. It is organized, well used, and on a schedule. And then we have the opposite of that, which is a polychronemic time system. This is a system where time is broken into one large chunk. It is not neat or organized, and people who use this time system are often considered very good multitaskers, and we've all been there before. Next, I'm going to be talking about how time affects the different relationships that we have and the different stances that we have in those relationships. For this topic, I'm going to use the example of if you are entering a place of employment, you're probably going to be entering as the underdog. You probably won't have much knowledge on the job you're going to perform. You won't have the upper hand, and you probably won't have a good flexible schedule. But in any place of employment, there is always a superior. The superior is probably your boss or some of your higher up coworkers. These superiors that are in the place of employment have more knowledge than you do. They have more flexible schedule due to the amount of time that they've been there, and they do have an upper hand more than what you would have. And that is okay. This is going to lead into the different conversations that we have and how time affects those conversations as well as it did as the relationships. The example that I'll use for this topic is if you were to bump into somebody at the store. And I'm going to talk about the two different relationships. The first one I'm going to talk about is if you were to bump into somebody who you knew at the store. You're probably going to have a good, lengthy conversation with them. You're probably going to go in depth on how they're doing, maybe what their family's been up to, some of the current events that are going on in their life, and maybe brush up on some personal stories. Whereas if you were to bump into a stranger, you probably won't have that lengthy conversation. You don't know each other on a personal level, so you won't be able to talk about any common ground. You might just brush up on some of the simple things that you will find in common to talk about. But what's interesting is, if you think about it, the time wait that you have to have with these conversations. For a person you know, you're probably going to strike up a conversation instantly. Whereas if you were to talk with a stranger, you might have to wait a little bit to get that conversation going, or even to get their attention to have that conversation. And then last but not least, I'm going to talk about how time affects our culture. And I'm going to use two examples for this, just like I did in the examples above. But for this one, I'm going to talk about if we were to trade in the US using these two different mindsets. The first one I'm going to talk about is the monochronemic mindset if we were to trade. If you had this mindset and you were looking to trade with another country, you'd probably be more optimistic. You'd probably be very excited about trading with them, and then thinking about the different opportunities that would bring you to trade with them. Whereas if you had the polychronemic mindset, you probably wouldn't be as willing to trade with them. You might hang on to the past and some of the negative history, or you just wouldn't even be looking for any opportunity. And that's okay too. But this is just examples on how the different times affect the different relationships, the way that we communicate, and the different cultures that we have. Thank you.